Hello, Reanimators. This is Stuart joining you from the West Coast, and along with me for the ride, East Coast, H.A. Conrad. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing? It might not be morning where you're listening to this podcast, but it's certainly morning, or actually it's not morning for you. It's afternoon, isn't it?
Just afternoon.
Well, it's still morning for me. The wonders of time travel and or intercoastal
Alliances?
yes, precisely. So today we are continuing this delightful journey through Black Summer Season 2. I have the shivvies just thinking about these last two episodes. We're doing episodes 3 and 4, which were Card Game and Cold War. And but before we can get to those two exhausting episodes in a good way, we have a little bit of news. And so the first one was an article from Dread Central talking about a trailer that is dropped for a sci-fi, and I'm going to put zombie in air quotes here, movie called Risen. And you got a chance to look at this trailer, HA. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks, look, again, there's some good content coming out. It's very, it's desaturated sort of in color. The premise is one that we've seen for a few, where it's that like a meteor is dropped and like hit the earth, and is she like a biologist, or she's some kind of the main character? She's like a scientist supposed to sort of direct. Sorry, she's looking to see what's happened, around this town, like lots of destruction and that kind of thing. But it looks pretty cool, at least this little edit trailer that we've seen, and obviously I think I think you're gonna have to I want to see a little bit more, but it looks pretty slick at this point, right?
Yeah,
And it's starring,
it definitely
it's like,
to me has like Andromeda strain vibes a little bit.
it's got that. It's got I don't know. It's a little bit more alien / zombie, I guess is the better way to put it. And a bit of a mystery. So the main character is named Lauren, and she has like a team that basically trying to figure out what's happening, and this is sort of the beginnings of an alien invasion that that they have to like basically fight against these aliens taking over the earth. So but it looks, I mean, it's a lower budget film, but it looks really good. And again, it's just interesting to see what's possible now, given even with a smaller budget. So I'll definitely check this out. So I don't know how you're feeling about it.
Yeah, it doesn't look cheaply made, at least in the trailer, but none of these actors are known entities to me.
No, I didn't recognize the names of the main actors are Carolyn McQuaid, Jack Campbell, Kenneth Chudillo, and Wasim Hawat. And I don't know that I've heard of any of them. So in any case, but sometimes that makes, as we know, sometimes makes for the best zombie flick. So that could be kind of fun. So maybe we'll review that later.
Yeah, totally.
In other news, Mr. Frank Darabont has finally, after this very long,
such a long road to get here.
And it's ridiculous. It really is. And basically, I have to say, like the sort of accounting practices and the things that they were doing basically cut him out of profits that he absolutely had a right to, in my opinion. But he was paid $200 million in a settlement by AMC, basically. And this has been, I mean, I think, is it over a decade that this has been going on? It's a long lawsuit.
I think it's 11 years, or
Yeah,
maybe it's about 10. It's a hell of a long time since he, considering that he got out of the show after writing half of season 2, right? Like he'd already gotten his mitts on season 2, or maybe it was even season 3 before he left, and the actor playing Dale left also in solidarity, also by having his guts ripped out by a zombie.
Yeah.
It was so they paid him basically for like earning perceived earnings that he would have been due if he had stayed with the show over the last umpteen seasons. Right. As well as some other, they kind of break down the way the money was broken out, and it's, I don't know, it gets into legalese pretty quickly, but I mean, I assume he's going to get some of that. I'm sure his legal team, after 10 years of trying to get this thing through, probably gets a chunk.
they get a big, massive chunk, I suspect. But I'm glad to see it's finally settled and that he did get something anyway.
The end of the article also says, and this really kind of just paves the way for Robert Kirkman's pending litigation against AMC. So AMC is not looking super cool coming out of this. They obviously were kind of being jerks to the people on whom they've made at least $200 million if this settlement is anything to be.
I think that this is like an interesting battle just with the creatives and slightly different bent on this. I don't know if you saw recently what happened in the UK, but basically they MP members of parliament basically there's been like an ongoing issue about the streaming services, specifically with music and artist rights. And basically in the UK, it sounds like they're going to reset those agreements so that the artists get a higher percentage. And basically the thing is like, okay, you have these big, massive companies making so much money and the creative people who are actually responsible for the content are getting cut out and it's unfair. I'm wondering if you'll see, and this sort of reminds me of the same situation, which is like, there would be no Walking Dead without Mr. Darabont, in my opinion, like not the way that it is now. He really did start in terms of like the vision and getting the trend started. I don't think that it would have been as successful a show if you didn't have him involved in the beginning. And so I definitely think that and I think that in part that's why he kind of continued with this honestly crazy long lawsuit, was because it's like if you back down on that, they will just continue to take advantage. And it seems kind of there's so much money involved that it seems sort of insane to me that there isn't some acknowledgement of that. But again, it's the Wild West, and I think especially with this franchise, if you think about all the money in terms of like merchandise and streaming and now all the different shows that have come out of it, like the spin-off shows, it's just such a massive franchise that like why wouldn't you acknowledge sort of the people that are getting you there? So yeah, in any case, that's all I have to say about that.
And we'll see what happens with Kirkman and how he does with AMC. Well, I'm sure he has moved on.
Speaking of a person who, if it was not for Kirkman, really, right. Yeah, like all of this stuff would be nothing. But I just think it's just interesting to me just because of Darabont's relationship with AMC. It's like, it's not like a question about whether he can bring a show, like a successful show to Matt for them. I don't know. It's just like a very odd thing to me.
Well, he brought such a pedigree of like, right. Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, all this like horror stuff. Well, not Shawshank really, but Green Mile. I guess Green Mile isn't really horror, but 2 Stephen King projects, even if it wasn't horror, he brought that pedigree and definitely like raised the bar for this show to be more successful from its first season, which it was, with Vato's the exception. That episode.
Right. I just think, it just seems like, and maybe this is what happens when, I don't know, you just get all the, and it's just so much bigger. It's not like, I don't know, it's not individuals, but then when you get people just sort of digging their heels in, and I don't know, and again, it's like, I think that these things have all been evolving, and especially with like the different ways that things can be watched and consumed and consumed. I think that is all sort of still evolving, and maybe that's kind of where it was for him. But I mean, I have to say, like bringing, especially like that first season of The Walking Dead, bringing that vision and bringing that particular story in the way that he did. As I said, I don't know that there were many people up to the task to do that. Yeah. But I will stop talking about that so we can get on with things. Speaking of other Walking Dead,
and other money grabs by AMC.
Correct. I have not seen this, so I'm going to let you talk about it because I will check it out, but I don't want to. I saw that it was out. I just haven't had time to look at it this week.
Yeah. So subscribers to AMC Plus, which is this like premier, I guess it's online only channel that AMC puts out, where you can get your episodes of the Walking Dead shows and other programs a few days earlier, and then some other kind of behind the scenes stuff. they just put out something they're calling Walking Dead Origins, or at least the first episode of that. And there's a lot of potential for this to be super cool. The first episode is about Daryl Dixon, and it's basically like walking through his story chronologically using footage from season 1 through 10, presumably. And Daryl Dixon is narrating over it, talking about his story.
Is it sort of regurgitated footage or all new footage?
It's all old. It's all original footage. Yeah. So
okay, so is it stuff we have seen before?
Yes.
Or is it stuff,
okay. They're literally playing clips from Daryl in season 1, like when Daryl walks out of the bushes and finds his deer and meets Rick for the first time, after that zombie has been eating it. And then Norman Reedus is just sitting at an oak table with a couple of cameras looking at him, not with his long hair, present day, I assume. And then this is the problem is that it's super scripted. It's Norman Reedus reading a script about what Daryl Dixon, what his frame of mind was at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, and how it changes as he gets to know people and has relationships with the rest of the characters on this cast. So where this could have been great, and where I've seen this work really well before, is like Blu-ray extra features, audio commentary, which is what this kind of is. It's almost like a video commentary, right? It's like, my favorite one is from the Lord of the Rings movies with Elijah Wood and other people from the cast talking about what's going on screen while you're watching it. And those can be really good. Sometimes they're a little embarrassing, like when Arnold Schwarzenegger is just literally describing the things that are happening on screen while you're watching them. And he's like, oh, yes, this is where I hit that man really hard. That doesn't always work. But Norman Reedus is here just reading a script. And yeah, there's 1 or 2 jokes in there. But I feel like if he'd been given just the carte blanche to be like, I remember when we shot this, it was hot as hell, and I was trying to get my head around what Daryl Dixon was all about. Instead, it's like, Daryl Dixon's a searcher, and he's always trying to find, and it feels like it just feels too polished and too handled, So that was my take. I know I only watched the first 20 minutes. It's an hour long, this one about Daryl.
Well, they picked like a character. I think we all know people love Daryl, so
yeah. So they wanted people to start watching these and fall in love with it.
So I can't help but agree with you about a potential money grab. So I'm going to reserve judgment till I see it, but I don't know that I necessarily need to watch a lot of these at this point. But there is. I'll definitely check it out and see. It's always kind of, and especially it's interesting to me to basically see some of the earlier footage too, and to see how it's evolved a little bit. So that could be
cool. And Daryl's look, and actually they have a lot of dialogue that Daryl's delivering in season 1, and he's a lot more chatty back then.
Yeah, he speaks a lot more. He starts to grunt a little bit more and become more taciturn as the seasons go on, which is interesting. And then, I have to say, like, it's, as it's always funny to me, both with him and Rick, sort of the level of hair and craziness depending on what they're going through. Like, he's got kind of that weird little grease mullet, but perfectly coiffed hair underneath it all. You know what I mean? Like, those haircuts that he has are not just happening, like that's not just hair growing out. And likewise, like Rick Grimes' sort of crazy beard stages always make me laugh, just to think about, like, there's got to be like a beard tamer or some kind of on-set person dealing with that stuff, which just, I don't know. I find, well,
if they get Andrew Lincoln to do one of these, I'd be interested to hear about the story of the beard. I haven't heard so far that about Daryl's hair. That hasn't really come into the audio, but
in any case, so I will check that out, and let's talk about that next time.
And I don't mean to sound too negative about it. It is kind of interesting, but I'd rather hear what Norman Reedus has to say than whoever definitely wrote this for him. Yeah,
agreed. I'd rather hear his thoughts personally than hear a scripted thing. So anyway, so next up, we're going to be talking about the next couple of episodes in Black Summer, episodes 3 and 4, Card Game and Cold War. And I texted you, Stuart, because I really, after the second one, desperately wanted to move on to the third one.
Well, there's a big cliffhanger. Like all my chronological beefs are like settled by the end of episode 4. We seem to be caught up, right? And there's a cliffhanger. And so, yeah, of course, yeah. Like
So
100%, I wanted to keep watching too.
I did restrain myself. I did. But I really wanted to after the end of episode 4. I wanted to start episode 5. So anyway, let's jump into it. And I'm curious to hear what you think about the storytelling mechanism again. And they still do a little bit of what we were seeing. At least they do it. There's still some of the odd storytelling happening. All this particular episode 3 card game is a little bit more linear than we've seen. It's not jumping as much, and we're actually just sort of I don't want to say stuck, but we're in one specific sort of.
We're stuck.
We are stuck, but in a different way. And so so let's get into it. But it's also because of things that we have seen in the previous episode. I kind of feel like it takes the some of the interesting parts out of it because we already know what the result will be. So the tension that we're seeing, it's there, but you and I, as a viewer, both know what the ultimate result will be. We just don't know how they're getting there.
Can I give you my hot take?
Yeah, go for it.
My hot take in a couple of words is Freddy did nothing wrong.
Correct.
Freddy was okay. He did a few things wrong, but Freddy was not the evil man that I thought he was before we came to this episode.
Yeah. So just given Rose's interactions with him, I really thought that he was like a gross dude that had possibly tried to assault either one or both of them.
He's just a little simple.
Yeah. And then the other thing that struck me about this episode, so before we should set the table. So basically, as those of you who've been following this particular series know, after episode 2, Rose and Anna we see how they get into the big house, how they get there. And they are let in much in the way they let Freddy in the other episode with like a zombie chasing them.
Yeah.
And as they get in, we see the characters in the house and we see the familiar face of the guy who we see die when there was the big sort of shootout
ambush. Yeah. And I barely recognize that dude until he puts on his green coat. I'm like, is that him? I can't really tell.
I knew it was him, but we also see some of the people that he had referenced in the other episode, like his wife.
Yeah.
And then we see the other, and we do see Freddy, and we see some of the other members of the household. There's another older woman, and then there is a mother with their 2 sons. And I have to say, the mother, and especially her son, Sonny.
Yeah.
There's something strange about them. Like they look weird, and they kind of act strange in a way that I thought that there might be more of a backstory that we were going to see with them.
Mm-hmm.
Their behavior.
Maybe we will.
Or hear about them. But even in this episode, like there's something quite odd about them. Did you get that feeling too?
Well, I mean, I was convinced she had a bite, maybe.
I was convinced of that. I was convinced that there was maybe something incestuous going on with her and Sonny.
Oh, she's a terrible mother. I mean, the thing she says to Sonny later in the episode, where they think Freddy is dead, and she's like, "You're both so useless." She says that to her son. And
then she has a bizarre kiss with him that is like super creeptastic. Like, I just thought they were a very odd little family. And Freddy, again, as you said, did nothing wrong, and even within this little triad of a family, he's definitely the most palatable. And there's nothing like he didn't do anything wrong, and he's actually, I think that in terms of a character in this zombie apocalypse, he's scared, but he's not evil or anything. So
the guy who plays Sonny is named Dakota Dalby, not a well-known actor to me. He's been in a fair amount of stuff, but it was when he was a child. I assume when he was a child. I don't know how old he is, but he seems he's 26. So he was in Falling Skies, which was that cool alien apocalypse show from 2014 and on. He was in iZombie apparently for 2 episodes, and the 100.
Oh, okay. So he's sort of been making the rounds.
He's made some rounds. I thought that I recognized him, but I'm thinking based on those, I don't think that I do. But he has a definite look. He plays this role super well. So does the mom. And I actually, everybody in this scene, grandma doesn't really have a lot of work to do other than look like kind of terrified a lot of the time. Yeah. But I feel like, everybody in this scene is just ratcheting up the tension. It's so tense. Like even before Green Jacket guy leaves, you can tell nothing here is good. Like nobody wants to go on this run to get supplies, and the mom and Sonny are being super pushy about the airplane and whether how they know them and what about the radio, and there's all this like tension. And
Well,
I
there's a
feel like
lot of
Rose and Anna
tension.
kind of put their guns down a little too early almost.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so much tension, and you feel like there's other backstories going on here that we're not privy to. Whatever happened before Rose and Anna showed up, there's a lot of distrust amongst the groups, both about whether this couple and the mom in the house, the grandma in the house rather, because they have the ham radio, and they have been communicating with this pilot that everybody's so curious about. And there's definitely distrust with Sonny, Freddie, and their mom, who think somehow that there's like some secret other agenda happening. There's also distrust about food and supplies. And even though they want and I'm sorry because I can't remember his oh sorry, his name is Mark, the guy who we had seen being interrogated before. Even though he's gonna go and get the supplies and it doesn't seem like anybody wants to go with him, there's distrust about him going to get the supplies. Like he might be rendezvousing with the pilot or might be doing this secret other ulterior motive stuff. At least that's the implication.
It's just all so batshit, and this is mostly Mom and Sonny coming up with these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and it's very odd. And and then we've got Rose and Anna, and they are very much obviously aligned, doing their own thing. Rose is not a pushover, even though Sonny is being honestly really creepy overall.
Yeah, she just doesn't respond to him a lot, which I think is actually a really good strategy because he's one of these people who wigs out when you talk to him, and he'll ask you all these questions, and she either like responds very simply, doesn't make eye contact, or she just doesn't talk to him. And I think that that's like the smartest approach, and certainly as the episode goes on and he gets more and more unhinged.
Right. And it's definitely the Sonny and Mom contingent that's being the most, weird. Freddie is just sort of along for the ride.
He is, but he doesn't get as in people's faces and aggressive as Sonny or Mom, but he does point his gun at people unnecessarily, and that happens more as the episode goes on too. Right. So when Green Jacket Mark goes out on his run, and like there's a tearful kind of really touching goodbye between him and Rhonda, who's his wife, and I'm like, oh my God, they just like on some level they know in a way that they're not going to see each other again, but also they're just trying to cover their bases, and if they don't, this is their last goodbye. He's going out,
and I feel like there's a really good tension because he also is like scared to leave her with these people. You can tell that.
And whoever the grandma is, we don't even know who she's related to.
Yeah. And then she's scared for him.
Yeah.
Like there's that. It was a really well acted out scene. So I thought that was good. And then
Mom and Sonny and Freddie are just casually carrying their guns around. And it seems like Rhonda has an axe. Mark, does he even have a gun? I don't even remember if I saw him with a gun.
Right.
Grandma certainly doesn't have any guns.
I don't think Grandma has anything. And then we should also mention that there's this weird thing about any of them going separately anywhere. Like, even when Anna goes up to use the bathroom, and this is a second little weird thing that, comes into play later, but there's some dude hiding up there.
Yeah.
And you think that it might be nefarious. He leaves her alone.
Yeah. And Freddie going to look for cream is even like Freddie's going to go off by himself. Like it's like nobody even wants to leave the room that everybody else is in for fear of something, like a plot being hatched against them. Right. Obviously, if Rhonda and Mark were to leave and go on the run, they could get locked out of the house by the other people, and they're worried about their grandma. If she's, again, I'm not sure if she's related to them or not, but there's always like a fear. And that comes in with Mom and Sonny and Freddie too, in their dynamic, and with Rose and Anna. Like Rose doesn't want Anna to go anywhere, let alone to the bathroom by herself. Yeah, like you said.
Right. And it's, and it's interesting because I do think that they keep this tension going. And I mean, we know even at the beginning of the episode that all these people are dead except for Freddie. We see so their bodies.
Yeah.
And we just see how it all falls apart. And I think they do a good job with that. But knowing that they're going to die is interesting. It's just like a matter of seeing how. So I think that they did a pretty good job with that. there is a level of stress that I found, like I was having like an anxiety attack watching this
Yeah,
episode.
there's stress inside the house between the humans, and then there's the outside, because two people go outside during this episode, Mark and then Freddie. They all know that there's a zombie out there because he chased Rose and Anna to the door.
Hmm.
But every so often, one of them just kind of goes outside, and Mark does treat it with serious, like he's taking it very seriously. He's hiding behind bushes and doing these little like scampers. But the zombie sees him and comes after him. He barely gets away on that snowmobile.
Yep.
And then Freddy's just a simpleton, right? So he goes outside with his flashlight. Why they couldn't get the extra wood when it was still daylight, I don't really know. Because outside with a flashlight, these zombies can see, I
Well, and I
assume.
loved how they tried to bully Anna into going and get the wood. Like,
Yeah.
why is that a good idea? Like, come on. And it was really strange, that whole thing.
Well, this is part of that. Like Rose holds the line really well against Mom
Yeah,
and
she
Sonny,
does.
and yeah, and Freddie just he gets treed, but he gets up that tree so fast. Good for him. But inside, then like Sonny, this is when that weird like, oh, you're so useless thing happens to Sonny. He
Yeah.
has started like he started pointing his shotgun at the grandma one time when she just gets up to get everybody Cliff Bars. Like it
Right.
doesn't, it's getting so bad that, and I was really happy to see that Rose and Anna's card game was really just code for who is who and how they're gonna kill them.
Yep. I thought that was
I
pretty funny.
And you started to see that really early on when she's like putting cards around the table and she's identifying people as like, this is the Queen of Hearts, this is the Jack, etc. And the
Hmm.
10. I think Freddie was a 10 and Sonny was a Jack. But I thought that was genius. I really love that part of this.
I did love that too.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you saw some of the I don't know, people commenting on the episode, but someone was like, "Is that a real card game?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think you missed the point of that one a little bit." So,
That was also a cool scene. Then this is the scene where Freddie is like, "Can I play with you?" And they're like, "It's really complicated. It's past, present, and future, and blah blah. Everything is wild or whatever." And they're like, "You're just yeah, you don't get it."
yep.
And Freddie's like, "I don't want to play anymore." But why do you smell so good? And it's not creepy. His delivery is not as creepy as
No,
I was thinking.
it's not as creepy as you would think, and I don't know. It is a weird thing to say, but anyway, that was
I mean, Rose gives Anna and Rose share a look after he says that and leaves, where they're just like, "Oh, that was bad." And maybe it could go bad if Freddie, I don't know, was more aggressive than he seems to be. But he just kind of then leaves them alone and then goes outside to get the wood and doesn't come back. Like that's the extent in a way
that's the
of
extent of it. Nothing. I thought something dramatic had probably happened, and it
he
didn't. So it
yeah.
was a little bit weird that it hadn't.
He was casually pointing a handgun at Rose and Anna earlier on when Sonny drew the shotgun on Grandma unnecessarily.
True.
They started having these standoffs fairly early. Like as soon as it turned dark and they were drinking whiskey in front of the fire, suddenly there was more pointing of guns at people. And then there's all the radio stuff too gets involved. And that's actually when Freddie is still inside the house and he goes upstairs with Rhonda and he's basically fine. He's like, "Oh, you can't get through? Give it a minute and try again later." He's reasonable-ish.
Yeah, and Sunny is not,
No.
and basically ultimately destroys the radio, which is, and even the stuff, even the confrontation between him and Rhonda is super bizarre.
Yeah, well, on Rhonda's part, I would say she knows Sonny is almost like a known entity. Like
Yeah,
he's gonna be freaking out on you, but if you don't like challenge him, he doesn't
right,
seem like he's gonna pull a trigger on. He doesn't actually attack anyone without provocation. She's
right.
just saying like, "I'm just trying to survive. I don't know what." I mean, maybe he's just yelling at her so much that she loses it. But she like goes for a gun and tries to shoot him and loses in that fight.
Right, and it's just like, I mean, and then of course she turns and it all
Well,
hell
come
breaks.
on. He's like, this is the one thing about the Mom, Sonny, and Freddie family. They're kind of all idiots, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Because when we see how this is done correctly later, when Rose and Anna do it like professionally, but he shoots Rhonda in the center mass. She dies within 20 seconds, but he has not even racked another round into the shotgun. He's not ready to follow up. He's just
No,
kind of slowly walking around the desk to see if she's dead.
right. It's like, anyway. And then I will say that the choreography is really well done and the editing is well done. And they, in this small space, Again, this makes this whole episode like a big old anxiety attack.
Tons of
Um,
tracking shots still.
yeah, but I mean, and then they have, the action moves downstairs, and again the sort of big fruition of the communication between Rose and Anna earlier. Just like they have a really big payoff here, which is that basically they take out everybody, and even poor grandma who got attacked by Rhonda. I mean, she's been really attacked, so it's like you don't really have a choice, but they just take them all out, like
but
it's
not right away. Not right away. Like, yes, they take out Rhonda and Granny, kind of showing that they are the alpha predators in this house at that point, because Mom and Sonny are trying to beat them up with bottles and pool cues. They like forget about their guns somehow. I don't even understand this. These people all had guns. But then, yeah, Rose and Anna, well, Rose really takes out both Rhonda and Grandma without even a second thought. And then there's like a quiet moment again. And they're sitting around the fire again. And then that's when Sonny suddenly runs upstairs because he hears something on the radio, destroys the radio, comes downstairs, finds Rose and Mom having an argument. And then without even like a cue that we can see, maybe there is one of like a visual cue, they cap both of them once and then a second time. And oh my God, I had chills. I was just like, that is just perfect.
It was well done.
I was really happy to see that they're doing it in a smart way.
Yep.
And seeing the contrast between some dumb bullies and some ice cold, smart people taking care of business. I mean, it's tragic. It's all tragic. But you know what? Once Rhonda and Grandma were dead, like there was nobody worth having in that house, frankly.
Right. And we have a little bit of a cliffhanger. Like at some point, one of the tensions is that the axe disappeared and they all were accusing each other, and it's in fact that weird dude that was upstairs. And there is that like sort of scene where you're like, oh my gosh, is he going to try to take them out? But he doesn't. He just kind of looks at them. And then that leads into the next episode, which is Cold War. One thing I did notice for both of these episodes, and this is consistent with like the beginning, again, another character or another element of this whole thing is the cold. So this is also something that like is informing their different decisions, like why they don't want to get locked out, why going out, in addition to the zombies, why going outside is such a big deal, while why getting inside is such a big deal. And you do see characters like basically pretty desperate to find shelter and to find, so there's this whole thing where when Anna and Rose first get into the house that they are invited to sit by the fire, and there's that. And then later on in this next episode, we see like parts of it, like when they're filming, we see like their breath, you know what I mean? Like, so it's this, I think they do a good job at, and it was probably pretty freaking cold to film this, I would imagine.
It looks absolutely, frigid for sure.
So I thought that was something that I think is impressive in what they're doing with these episodes, in that it's very clear that this is in addition to the bigger issue of survival, the zombies, there is just a general survival thing with the elements, with the cold. So,
and think about when they had to do like with these tracking shots, think about how many times they had to reset and like do the footprints in the snow. Oh my God. And like the destruction inside this house by the end of this episode. I can't even imagine how difficult this show must have been to maintain that continuity. I mean, once the firefight by the end of this episode is in the house, like everything is destroyed, but there are bullet holes in the wall that I feel like you probably had to patch over and redo with squibs every so often.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, I think that they probably had to be really careful. I don't know how many times you could actually redo some of these things, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, because a lot of windows get shot out too. It's, and can I just say the basement, what a horrible place.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. So this episode is this is the most exhausting. How many minutes was this episode? Like 40 minutes? It
felt like it was 3 hours, at least for me.
In a good way, but yeah. Not like, oh, it's slow and maudlin. No, it starts off with a little bit of a contemplatory sort of, here we go. There's Sun lying in the snow. There's about nine of the operators left with Nasri.
Sun's having like a really weird day.
She's having a terrible time. You remember how like confident and self-assured she was in season 1? and I'm not saying this is like the Lucy treatment from Walking Dead where they've just stripped her of her power. Well, her power has been stripped because she is a prisoner, and these guys,
Prisoner, and they're like, I guess, like the thing that, like, maybe I am missing something.
yes,
I am missing
no,
something.
I mean I am too. Why the
I
motive?
don't understand the motive behind this.
Yeah, and how
Um,
much do Nasri and these guys know? Like them
right.
choosing Sun to wave a white flag, is that like a coincidence? But not that
Like, I don't
Jamie
know if
King can
it's
even
like
see her face.
mistaken identity that they think she's something else.
Yeah,
It just feels like maybe there is a big gap here that, and if
were they
anybody,
always hunting? Were they always hunting Rose and Spears and Sun for some
right,
reason?
like, was this something going on? I don't know, but they have her walking around like Chewbacca with her hands tied up and yanking her around like, like a, although she actually is a prisoner, she's not faking being a prisoner, but
They
they
check
have,
on her. Like they're also kind of making sure that she's okay to an extent.
yeah, it's like very strange. So maybe this will get filled in later for us, but that is strange. This I feel like so much of this episode revolves around Sun's survival, and
Her
there's
breathing.
moments where it's just like, oh my gosh, how is she going to get out of this one?
How's she go- how is she gonna get out of it? I mean, also we have to, Rose and Anna are in a real pickle, and Freddie. They're all in a real pickle inside this house because not only are these 10 heavily armed operator dudes coming up to their house who intend to come inside. There's also the gang shows up halfway through the episode,
Right.
and it like you're like, oh wow, this is a really bad situation at the beginning of it, and then it just gets so much worse.
Yeah, like there's the two warring factions, so we see a lot of action with that. And again, I am truly enjoying the show. Like the filmmaking is very good. The storytelling, again, without almost zero dialogue, is impressive. It really is just like watching a moving comic book or something. And it's definitely got a bit of a video game feel to it in parts. A lot of it, I think. And but it's like, and these, like, the stories of some of these people, so you've got like, because of the things that we've seen before, so we see the stories of Sophie and Naziri collide. They collided before, but they collide in a big way here with their two different groups. We see Naziri just totally, like, with the one man on his team who takes out one of the zombies that was also a member of their team, and Naziri doesn't even
That kind
hesitate.
of that gives away their surprise element a little bit, but
Right, right. But Naziri doesn't even hesitate, takes him out. Like, not, it doesn't even know whether the guy's like, I'm good, and he's done.
oh, that
Um,
scene. Oh yeah, sorry, I thought you were talking about the beginning still. No,
oh no,
that was insane.
yeah, like
That
as soon
dude,
as
that
someone
dude
is like,
actually does fend off a zombie. He save, like he saves his life. There's no bite. There's no
nope,
bite on that dude. But Nasri doesn't even hesitate. Well, he does. He hesitates. And the guy sees it coming. He's like, no, I'm fine. And then he still shoots him in the face.
right. And
Oh
then
my
it's just
God.
like, and it's like this insane firefight slash zombie chase slash all over the place all at once. It's exhausting to even
It's
think
yeah.
about who choreographed this, the
It's
special
mayhem. It's such a frenzy. But then they also have scenes like where one of those ganger dudes breaks into the basement
right.
through the greenhouse somehow. Little does he know that Freddy was shot in the first like exchange
Yeah.
of gunfire, and Rose threw him down the
He
stairs
like
into the
kicks him
basement.
down the stairs. Poor Freddy. He's just
Oh,
like,
I mean, it's kind of smart if she doesn't need to go down to the basement anyway. Now she has a built-in sort of defense mechanism down
well,
there.
she does, and she also has protected herself from him because she know he is.
Yeah,
There's no saving
he's
him.
been shot a few times in the torso.
Yeah, there's no saving him, and she knows that. And so she's like, "There's no time," and just shoves him down the stairs. Not meaning there's no time before you turn, basically. So that I thought was really well done. And then the whole scene between him and that other guy
God,
is rough.
that
And
was
then
intense. And there's actually like a suicide imagery warning at the beginning of this episode
yeah,
that's referring to the end of that little sequence where the dude realizes he's been bit like 5 times, and he just keeps getting bit by zombie Freddy but keeps
yeah,
fighting back. And I kind of liked seeing the, I don't know, they came at that fight with a real sense of, all right, sometimes you have a zombie fight and a guy just gets bitten and then killed by the zombie. What you don't have as often is I'm going to get bit like 5 or 6 times. You know, this guy is done for, but he's not going to give up fighting. And he does eventually kill Zombie Freddy.
Well,
But then then he's got
I
a
also think
problem.
in the moment you probably go into survival mode, and I
Yeah.
think that's normal. And then I think that this is very realistic in that when you think about it, then you're like, oh, I know what's next. And so I mean, it was disturbing, but also made sense. So I thought that that was an interesting thing to show. Um, and then we see the crazy firefight all throughout this
Everywhere, outside, inside.
everywhere, and like, as I said, poor Sun is like, it kind of follows her to some extent, and she's like, still her wrists are both they're in handcuffs but also tied,
Yeah.
and she's been yanked around by Nasri, and she has to like protect herself because they kind of tie her to this thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, what a vulnerable position to feel like you're not going to be able to, and obviously people are turning left and right, like, so
They tie her to that banister before the shootout starts. If this is the same basement or a different basement,
yeah,
it's not really easy to
I
tell.
don't know, but it's
But then
rough.
the shootout begins. She is not in cover. She's just tied to a banister in the middle of a firefight. The blood is like pouring onto her, but when there's people getting shot right in front of her, and then when after Nasri aces his own guy and he like leaves, and then that other zombie shows up, she has to. I mean, luckily she can break out of that banister easily enough, and then she's kind of just running around hiding while the firefight goes on around her. There's a few scenes in this episode where people are like just tucked into like a bathtub or around a corner while the dudes with the rifles are clearing rooms, and they just manage to get away, or not get away, but not get seen. So it's like there's not actually a lot of detail. There's tons of detail in this episode, but it's way too much for us to go through exhaustively. But bottom line is, I think the gang is almost all killed.
Yeah.
You don't see the ringleader, the one with the wool hat. I don't think you see him after the first couple of
No.
minutes. So maybe he's still out there. Maybe there's a few more of these gang members or whatever. They're not really gang members, but this crowd of ruffians. There's maybe a couple of the operators left. We see Nasri with one other dude, and our big plot twist, Sophie or Sophia, whatever her name was.
Yes.
She appears to be one of his. She's a mole for him, or has been the whole time, potentially.
I think so, because they look each other and they're together.
And then they smile and leave. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, we're cool.
And poor Sun is just like yanked again. And it's like, oh my gosh, after all of that, really?
But there were probably, I don't know, 40 or 50 people in this firefight, or it felt like there were at least. And by the end, it's really hard to tell. Maybe there's 5 or 6. And Rose and Anna and airplane mechanic dude who had been hiding in the house leave out the back door. All they see are dead bodies. They're both picking up guns. Anna is a smart lady and picks up a bandolier of shotgun shells. I was kind of hoping they would loot a little more, but I guess, yeah, you probably want to get out of there before. Maybe there's somebody dying slowly and going to turn into a zombie. It's probably best to just get out of there.
Right. And the guy that's been hiding in the house basically says that he's worked at the airstrip and knows where it is, so he's going to lead them to that. So there's that. The
story continues to tie so much into this plane and this airstrip, and that appears to be part of the motive for everybody.
Right. They all stop when they hear the airplane.
Every time.
It's always the motive, and there's this moment that always has happened. So again, it's and it was definitely like, and this is the part where I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to see the next episode, but I restrained myself, so I did not. And so I'm excited to see the next couple. I'm really enjoying the series. I think that it's really, and again, as I said before, despite some of the weird jumps in the timeline and the narrative, I don't mind them telling the story this way. I think it's kind of interesting, and as long as there's some breaks in that make it a little less exhausting, I think that's fine. But again, breath of fresh air compared to Fear the Walking Dead this past season.
God.
So.
Yeah, and remember, Spears wasn't even in this episode at all, or Julius James or whatever he goes by in this season. Right. So we'll have to see where he is. I imagine that'll be a bit more of a slow burn once we get back to his story and that shadowy figure who is following him. But we get.
And we also, I should also mention, so Sun and Anna and Rose never get reunited. They were all in the same house together, and they never see each other.
They never saw each other.
I mean, the only part that they see of Sun is like when she's sort of hidden by a bush raising the white flag.
Yeah.
So it's not like so that doesn't happen. And so there's this level of, are they going to see each other, or like what's going to happen? Because is like there going to be some misunderstanding that they think somehow like Sun's betrayed them or whatever. I don't know. It just, so I thought that was another way that they kept tension, and they're keeping tension in this series because they have not been reunited, and then Spears is out there too. So
Think also about the resolution of this episode. Why did Nasri want to go in that house? What did he actually get for all of that effort and losing all of those people? He actually just leaves with nothing except for a fraction of the dudes he went in there with, and he still just has Sun, and now he has Sophie. But I don't know if that was really what he wanted.
I agree, but I guess we will find out more later.
Yeah. And so should we bid everybody adieu then and come back next time with episodes 5 and 6 of Black Summer?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's do it.
So please let us know what you thought of these two, because we both needed to take a little lie down. So you can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at reanimatedpcast, and our show notes will be online at reanimatedpodcast.com.
And until next time, ciao. And thanks for listening. And please do let us know what you think about this.